Family, listen closely, because this isn't a moment for soft words or casual inspiration. This is a wake-up call. This is a spiritual alert. This is a divine interruption to remind you of who you are and what's about to break loose in your life. You're not being attacked because you're weak. You're being attacked because you're loaded with purpose. You're being resisted because you're carrying a future the enemy can't stop. You're in a battle because he sees what you don't yet see, your breakthrough, your elevation, your next level. When the enemy notices movement in the spirit, he reacts. He senses momentum. He sees the winds shifting in your favor. And that's why the pressure is rising, the confusion is stirring, the storms are getting louder. But hear this clearly. The attack is the announcement. The warfare is the proof. The struggle is the evidence that something powerful is on the horizon. You may feel tired, but you're not defeated. You may feel surrounded, but you're not abandoned. You may feel stretched, but you're still standing. And standing means the enemy has already lost more than he wants you to realize, because every time you refuse to quit, you expose his weakness. Every time you get back up, you embarrass his strategy. Every time you keep believing when everything screams give up, you remind darkness that you know where your help comes from. He's attacking your mind because a renewed mind is dangerous. He's attacking your peace because a peaceful believer is unstoppable. He's attacking your relationships because unity creates power. He's attacking your confidence because he knows God is about to use you in ways that will shake the ground beneath your feet. But let me declare something over you right now. What's coming is greater than what's been. What's ahead is stronger than what's behind. What God is preparing for you is bigger than anything the enemy can threaten you with. This is not the time to shrink back. This is not the time to lose heart. This is not the time to believe the lies whispering in the dark. This is the moment where you plant your feet, square your shoulders, lift your head and say, if I'm being attacked, it means heaven is moving and I refuse to break. You were built for this season. You were equipped for this battle. You were chosen for this journey. And the enemy's resistance is simply confirmation that you're getting closer, closer to clarity, closer to destiny, closer to the very thing you've been praying for. So here is your call to action. Stand firm. Don't fold. Don't bow. Don't run. Fight back with faith. Move forward with courage. Speak life when you feel pressure. Walk in expectation even when you can't see the evidence yet. Because what's coming is worth every tear, every push, every sleepless night, and every spiritual battle you faced. And when it arrives, when the breakthrough shows up, you'll look back and say, the attack wasn't breaking me. It was building me. Now stand strong. Your future is too powerful to surrender. You need to understand something powerful right from the start. The attack you're experiencing is not a sign that you were failing. It's the greatest evidence that you are carrying something the enemy cannot afford to let you release. The pressure you feel, the obstacles rising out of nowhere, the sudden heaviness in your spirit, these are not random events. These are targeted strikes against your purpose because your purpose threatens darkness. If you weren't dangerous, you wouldn't be targeted. If nothing valuable was inside you, nothing would be trying so hard to stop you. That alone should shift how you see everything coming against you. Here's the hook. What if the very thing you're calling an attack is actually a signal of your assignment? What if the enemy is reacting because he sees the greatness in you more clearly than you see it in yourself? Sometimes the enemy recognizes your potential before you do. He sees the shift in the atmosphere around your life. He senses the calling on your name. He notices when heaven starts moving things in your direction. And because he can't stop heaven, he tries to stop you by discouraging you, distracting you, draining you, and making you doubt the very identity that God placed inside you. Every attack you're facing is connected to what you carry, not what you lack. You carry influence. You carry purpose. You carry a future that heaven has authorized. And the enemy is terrified because he knows once you discover your own strength, once you activate your faith, once you step fully into your purpose, every chain he's been using to hold you will break on the spot. That is why the pressure increases right before clarity comes. That's why the confusion gets louder right before direction arrives. That is why life suddenly gets heavier when you're closest to stepping into something greater. Here's another hook to wake your spirit up. If the enemy is fighting you this hard, imagine the size of the breakthrough he's trying to keep you from. He doesn't attack what's empty. He attacks what's full. He doesn't go after what's powerless. He goes after what's potent. The magnitude of the warfare often reveals the magnitude of the destiny. Attacks are spiritual indicators that you're carrying something explosive, something that will touch others, shift atmospheres, break generational patterns, or open doors for people connected to you. You might be thinking, why me? Why all this? Because you were chosen to carry something bigger than the average person. Purpose always attracts pressure. Calling always attracts conflict. Anointing always attracts attack. The greater your assignment, the greater the resistance. The enemy sees what's inside you and what's coming for you. And that vision terrifies him. He knows once you step into it, you become unstoppable. So he tries to overwhelm you before you awaken. He tries to break you before you bloom. He tries to silence you before you speak. But understand this, the very fact that you're still here, still breathing, still fighting, still pushing forward, means the attack has already failed. You are being targeted because you are a threat. You are being pressed because you are powerful. You are being opposed because you are destined. So instead of asking, why am I being attacked? Shift your question to what is the enemy so afraid of inside me? Because the attack is not aimed where you are, it's aimed at where you're going. The enemy sees your future rising, your strength growing, your influence stretching, and your purpose waking up. And he knows once you fully embrace who you are, nothing will be able to stop what God has placed in you. When the pressure in your life begins to rise, when the warfare intensifies, when everything around you suddenly feels heavier than it did before, that's not coincidence, that's confirmation. Resistance always increases when breakthrough is near. The enemy can sense a shift long before you see it with your eyes. He recognizes momentum in the spiritual realm. He sees doors beginning to open, favor beginning to form, and opportunities moving into position. And because he can't stop what heaven has already set in motion, he tries to stop you from stepping into it. Here's the hook. What if the chaos around you is actually the announcement that you're closer than you've ever been? What if the sudden attacks are not signs of failure, but signs of progress? Because the enemy doesn't fight you over where you've been. He fights you over where you're going. Every storm, every setback, every moment of pressure is a reaction to the progress you're making, even the progress you haven't recognized yet. Think about it. Battles rarely intensify at the beginning. They intensify right before victory. Darkness doesn't fight when you're stuck. It fights when you start breaking free. That's why the moment things begin to align, distractions come out of nowhere. That's why when your spirit begins to grow, old temptations suddenly resurface. That's why when you finally find direction, confusion tries to creep back in. Resistance rises because your breakthrough is getting closer. The enemy knows he's running out of time to derail you. Here's another powerful hook. If your life feels like a battlefield, it's because you've stepped into territory the enemy never wanted you to reach. He sees the blessing forming behind the scenes. He knows your prayers are gaining power. He knows your faith is becoming unshakable. He realizes you're beginning to walk in identity instead of insecurity, confidence instead of fear. And his only strategy is to create enough noise to make you doubt what God has already begun. You have to understand, breakthroughs rarely come wrapped in comfort. They come wrapped in pressure. Right before a blessing is released, you often face the heaviest internal warfare. Not because you're weak, but because something inside you is shifting, stretching, expanding. You are growing beyond the limits the enemy tried to place on your life. The discomfort is not a sign that something is wrong. It's a sign that something is developing. That's why the enemy works overtime to wear you down. He wants you tired enough to quit. He wants you discouraged enough to stop believing. He wants you overwhelmed enough to sit still instead of pressing forward. But here's the truth. If the battle has intensified, that means you've entered the final stage. The moment before the blessing is often the moment that feels the darkest. It feels lonely. It feels draining. It feels confusing. But that is the enemy's last attempt to make you walk away from something that is already yours. He knows once you step through this pressure, you will never go back to who you used to be. You'll rise stronger, clearer, wiser, and more confident in who you are and what you carry. The resistance is not here to destroy you. It's here because the enemy knows he's losing his grip on you. He sees the shift happening in your mind, the strength building in your spirit, the purpose awakening in your soul. He sees heaven preparing to release something over you that he cannot stop. And because he can't block the blessing, he tries to block your belief. Because he can't close the door God opened, he hopes you'll stop walking toward it. Because he can't change your destiny, he tries to change your direction through pressure. So the next time you feel the attack intensifying, the next time you feel the weight increase, the next time you feel resistance rising, remind yourself, this battle is happening because my breakthrough is near. Persistence is not just an action. It is a weapon. It is a spiritual force that disrupts everything the enemy has designed to stop you. Every time you refuse to quit, you weaken the power of the attack sent against you. Your persistence carries a weight that your enemy cannot stand under. He hopes you don't realize how powerful it truly is. He hopes you underestimate the impact of simply holding on when everything in your life tells you to let go. But persistence is the one thing the enemy cannot predict, cannot control, and cannot defeat. Here's the hook. What if the enemy's greatest fear is not your strength, but your decision to keep going even when you feel weak? Because persistence is not about perfection. Persistence is not about always feeling strong. Persistence is about showing up when you're tired, believing when you're confused, praying when you feel dry, and pushing when everything tries to pull you backwards. Every moment you choose to move forward, even if it's just 1 inch, you are breaking his strategy apart piece by piece. The enemy attacks your consistency because he knows if you ever stay steady long enough, nothing can stop the momentum God will build in your life. He doesn't fear your talent. He doesn't fear your knowledge. He doesn't fear your past victories. What he fears is your refusal to give up. A persistent believer is unstoppable because they can't be manipulated by circumstances. They don't make decisions based on emotions. They don't collapse under pressure. They rise. They keep walking. They keep pushing. And every time they rise, the enemy loses ground. Here's another hook. What if your persistence is preaching a sermon the enemy hates to hear? Every time you get up after a setback, that's a sermon. Every time you forgive when you'd rather stay bitter, that's a sermon. Every time you pray again, try again, get up again, that is spiritual noise that terrifies darkness. Because your persistence announces that you still believe God is working, even when you cannot see the evidence yet. Persistence makes you a threat because it denies the enemy access to your future. He knows he can't destroy your destiny. He can only try to wear you down until you surrender it yourself. That's why he tries so hard to exhaust you emotionally, mentally, spiritually. He hopes you'll misinterpret fatigue as failure. He hopes you'll mistake delay for denial. He hopes you'll confuse pressure with defeat. But persistence protects you from those lies. Persistence keeps your mind focused when emotions try to hijack your perspective. And here's the truth. Some of the greatest victories in life are not won by people who felt the strongest. They're won by people who refuse to stop showing up. Consistency beats intensity every time. Anyone can be strong for a moment, but to stay steady through storms, through setbacks, through delays, through confusion, that requires a different kind of strength. A strength the enemy cannot break. A strength that grows with every step you take. A strength that becomes dangerous to darkness. Think about how far you've come. There were storms that should have destroyed you, but persistence carried you. There were nights when you didn't know how you'd make it, but persistence kept your spirit alive. There were moments you wanted to quit, but something inside you refused to let go. That was not accidental. That was not weakness. That was not survival mode. That was strength waking up inside you. Strength the enemy hoped you'd never discover. Persistence is the echo of your purpose. It is the whisper in your soul that says, not yet, not now. Don't give up. Keep moving. The enemy can shake you, distract you, delay you, but he cannot stop you as long as you refuse to surrender. So every time you rise after an attack, every time you take another step forward, every time you decide to keep believing despite the battle, your persistence becomes your victory in motion. Your mind is the first battlefield, and the enemy knows it. Before he attacks your life, before he disrupts your peace, before he touches anything around you, he aims for your thoughts. Because if he can control your mind, he can control your movement. If he can influence your thinking, he can influence your decisions. Your mind is where victory begins and where defeat tries to take root. That's why the enemy works overtime to plant doubt, fear, insecurity, confusion, and discouragement. Not because those thoughts are true, but because he hopes you'll believe them long enough to stop believing in yourself. Here's the hook. What if the battle you think is happening around you is actually happening within you? What if the real war is not in your circumstances, but in your thoughts about your circumstances? The enemy doesn't need to destroy your life. He just needs to convince you that you're already defeated. He doesn't need to take away your opportunities. He just needs to convince you that you're unworthy of stepping into them. He doesn't need to close doors. He only needs to make you afraid to walk through the ones already open. Your thoughts shape your emotions. Your emotions shape your decisions. Your decisions shape your destiny. So if the enemy can influence your mind, he can influence the path you take. That's why you'll suddenly feel unexplainable anxiety before a breakthrough. That's why negative thoughts rise when you're close to success. That's why random whispers of you can't, you're not enough, you don't deserve this appear out of nowhere at the worst times. Because something powerful is forming in your life and the enemy wants to talk you out of it before it arrives. Here's another hook. What if the mental pressure you're feeling is proof that you're stepping into a version of yourself the enemy hoped you'd never discover? He knows once your mind aligns with your purpose, you become unstoppable. Once you start thinking from a place of confidence instead of insecurity, from faith instead of fear, from truth instead of lies, everything changes. You begin to walk differently, speak differently, stand differently, believe differently, and the enemy can't defeat a mind that is anchored in truth. That's why the attacks on your mind feel so personal, because they are. The enemy studies your patterns. He knows the lies that used to work on you in the past. He knows the insecurities you struggled with for years. He knows the memories you try to forget. He knows the fears that slow you down. And he uses those mental triggers to keep you stuck in cycles of anxiety, cycles of doubt, cycles of overthinking, cycles of self-sabotage. But here's the truth. Those thoughts are not reflections of who you are. They are reflections of what the enemy is afraid you will become. Your mind is powerful. It can either be your greatest prison or your greatest weapon. When you guard it, protect it, feed it truth, and filter out lies, you step into a place where attacks lose their power. Because the enemy cannot manipulate a mind that refuses to entertain his voice. He cannot derail a spirit that refuses to absorb negativity. He cannot distract a person who knows how to silence internal noise with spiritual clarity. Think about how many times you almost gave up. Not because the situation was impossible, but because your mind was overwhelmed. Think about the blessings you almost walked away from because fear spoke louder than purpose. Think about the opportunities you hesitated to accept because old insecurities resurfaced at the worst moment. That wasn't life working against you. That was the enemy working against your thoughts, because he knew if your mind ever aligned with truth, you would walk boldly into everything meant for you. Your mind is sacred territory. The enemy knows that if he can't take your purpose, he'll try to take your perspective. If he can't steal your calling, he'll try to distort your confidence. If he can't stop your destiny, he'll try to distract your thinking. But once you recognize the battle for what it is, once you understand every negative thought is an attack on your future, you begin to rise with a strength the enemy cannot break. You win battles in your life by first winning battles in your mind. And when your thoughts become anchored, centered, grounded, and strengthened, the enemy loses access to the first place he tries to fight you. Attack never shows up without a reason. Pressure doesn't increase without purpose behind it. What feels like spiritual resistance is often a signal that something powerful is already moving in your direction. Attack doesn't mean you're losing. It means something in your life is being activated. The enemy isn't responding to where you are. He's reacting to where you're about to go. He sees the shift coming before you do. He senses the blessing forming before you feel it. He recognizes the breakthrough approaching before you even realize you're standing on the edge of it. Here's the hook. What if the attack you're facing right now is actually the announcement that heaven has released something with your name on it? What if the resistance isn't there to defeat you, but to confirm that something spiritual is breaking open for you? The enemy does not waste energy. He doesn't attack randomly. He only targets what threatens him. And the moment he senses that God is elevating you, strengthening you, preparing you, positioning you, he tries to create noise around you to distract you from what's being activated within you. The pressure you're feeling is connected to progress. The warfare intensifying around you is connected to growth. The confusion rising is connected to clarity that's coming. Attacks don't show up unless something in your life is shifting. And the enemy knows that once you step into this new level, he will never be able to use the old strategies on you again. He knows once you cross this threshold, once you gain this wisdom, once you rise in this strength, you will become too powerful to manipulate, too grounded to deceive, too focused to detour. Another hook. What if the enemy is trying to stop something that has already been released in your favor? He's not fighting where you are. He's fighting what's been sent towards you. He's fighting the answers you prayed for. He's fighting the peace that's forming in your spirit. He's fighting the opportunities rising in the background of your life. He's fighting the doors God has already opened. He's fighting the version of you that is emerging, stronger, wiser, bolder, more disciplined, more focused, more dangerous to darkness than ever before. When attack shows up, something is being activated inside you. Resilience, wisdom, courage, clarity, authority. You don't gain strength when life is smooth. You gain it when everything tries to break you and you still keep moving. You don't develop discipline when everything is easy. You develop it when you choose purpose over distractions. You don't build spiritual power in comfort. You build it in conflict. And the enemy knows that every minute you endure the attack, something inside you is being sharpened and strengthened. Attacks are often the birthplace of elevation. They push you into deeper prayer. They force you to confront what you've avoided. They reveal who's truly with you and who's against you. They tear away false confidence so real confidence can grow. They expose old mindsets so new ones can take root. They strip away what can't go with you so you can rise lighter and stronger into what's ahead. The enemy fights you hardest at the place where your identity is about to be upgraded. The enemy sees purpose activating inside you, and that terrifies him. He sees courage waking up in you. He sees old fear losing its grip. He sees wounds healing that he hoped would stay open. He sees your faith growing stronger than your doubts. He sees you walking away from what used to bind you. He sees you stepping into clarity he never wanted you to have. And when he realizes he can't stop the blessing, he tries to stop your belief. When he realizes he can't shut the door, he tries to make you too discouraged to walk through it. When he realizes he can't block your future, he tries to distract you in your present. But the resistance you're facing right now is not a sign of defeat. It is a sign that something is being activated within you and around you. Every attack is a clue that heaven is moving. Every challenge is evidence that you've entered a spiritual shift. Every battle is proof that what's coming is greater than what you've left behind. You weren't placed in this season by accident. You didn't stumble into this battle by coincidence. You were built for this exact moment, even if your feelings haven't caught up with your purpose yet. Every trial you've survived, every hardship you've endured, every mountain you've climbed has shaped you, stretched you, strengthened you, and prepared you for what you're facing now. Nothing about your journey is wasted. Nothing you've walked through is meaningless. Every piece of your story is part of your equipping, and the enemy knows it. Here's a hook. What if the very thing you're calling a burden is actually the blessing that trained you for your next level? What if the struggles you thought were breaking you were actually building something unstoppable inside you? You were built for this season because this season requires someone with endurance, someone with courage, someone with spiritual weight, someone like you. There are things you've learned through pain that no classroom could have taught you. There is strength you've gained from storms that comfort never could have produced. There are depths in you that only pressure could have revealed. You didn't just survive battles. You collected wisdom from them. You didn't just endure heartbreak. You gained discernment through it. You didn't just walk through dark valleys. You discovered a light in you that darkness couldn't put out. And now as you step into this new season, the enemy is nervous because you're no longer who you used to be. You're wiser, stronger, sharper, more aware, more focused, more spiritually grounded. You became someone he never wanted you to become. This is why the attack has risen, not because you're unprepared, but because you're finally prepared. Another hook. What if the enemy is fighting you because he sees the upgraded version of you emerging, the version he prayed you'd never discover? You were built for this season because you've grown through seasons that tried to destroy you. People walked away, but you kept standing. Plans fell apart, but you didn't collapse. Doors closed, but you didn't lose hope. You learned how to rise from ashes, navigate storms, and rebuild from broken pieces. You learned resilience the hard way, and resilience is one of the greatest weapons a believer can ever carry. There is a strength in you now that cannot be faked. There's a boldness in you now that wasn't there before. There is a clarity in your spirit that only comes from surviving what was meant to take you out. And the enemy sees this. He sees the growth. He sees the maturity. He sees the transformation. He sees the fire in you that used to be just a spark. He sees the authority in your voice that used to be silence. He sees the confidence in your steps that used to be hesitation. And he knows that once you fully embrace who you are now, he will never control you the way he once did. You were built for this season because this season requires someone who can carry weight. Someone who doesn't fold under pressure. Someone who doesn't retreat when things get hard. Someone who knows how to rely on God when everything else fails. This season needs your voice, your strength, your wisdom, your perspective. This season needs the version of you that was forged through fire, not the one that existed before the fire. What you've been through has positioned you to lead, to rise, to step boldly into the calling that's been waiting for you. Every experience, even the painful ones, trained you for this level of purpose. You learned how to fight in the dark. You learned how to believe without seeing. You learned how to stand even when shaking and the enemy is terrified because he realizes something you may not have fully realized yet. You're no longer breakable in the ways you used to be. You don't crumble the way you did before. You don't panic the way you did before. You don't doubt the way you did before. Your spirit has been conditioned. Your faith has been stretched. Your courage has been activated. You were built for this because you were shaped by seasons that required strength you didn't know you had. And now that strength is showing. Now that wisdom is speaking. Now that calling is rising. And the enemy can do nothing but fight what he cannot stop. The unstoppable, unshakable, refined version of you that was born through every battle you survived.